The U.S. State Department spokesperson Heather Nauert has said that the OPCW team has still not been able to enter Douma in Syria. This after 12 days since the chemical attack. She accused Russian officials of working with the Syrian regime to sanitize the area of the chemical attack. U.S. officials say the assessments following the U.S., British and French missile strikes on Syria showed they had only a limited impact on President Bashar al-Assad's ability to carry out chemical weapons attacks. The Syrian government stepped up its efforts to retake the opposition's last besieged enclaves as rebels prepared to withdraw from one, and a newspaper reported an ultimatum against another. As the Syrian government stepped up its efforts to retake the opposition last besieged enclave, Syrian mainstream opposition leader Nasser al-Hariri accused the Syrian government of seeking a military solution to the conflict rather than negotiating a settlement. Iraq carried out airstrikes on Islamic State positions in Syria a week after Prime Minister Haider al-Abadi said his country would defend itself from militant threats across the border. Iraqi F-16 warplanes crossed into Syria to carry out the strikes after coordination with Assad's government. Iran warned the United States of unpleasant consequences if Washington pulls out of a multinational nuclear deal. Under Iran's settlement with the United States, France, Germany, Britain, Russia and China, Tehran agreed to curb its nuclear program to satisfy the powers that it could not be used to develop atomic bombs. Russia has said that Syrian government forces have found German chlorine containers and British smoke grenades in eastern Ghouta. Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi attended the 25th Commonwealth Heads of Government meeting in London. The Prime Minister was received by his British counterpart Theresa May and Commonwealth Secretary General Baroness Patricia Scotland. A day after Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi warned Pakistan against exporting terror, reports indicate that PM Modi is unlikely to have bilateral talks with his Pakistani counterpart in London as the two leaders attend the Commonwealth Heads of Government meeting. Queen Elizabeth II hosted a state dinner for Commonwealth heads of government and their partners as an African statesman expressed the organization's regret at her plans to wind down her work with it. Britain's Queen Elizabeth met with New Zealand Prime Minister Jacinda Ardern at Buckingham Palace on the sideline of Commonwealth heads of government meeting. Ardern is pregnant with her first child. Britain's Prince Harry and his fiancée Meghan Markle attended a women's empowerment reception in London hosted by British Foreign Minister Boris Johnson. The meeting, which took place on the sideline of Commonwealth Heads of Government meeting, aims to provide quality education to girls across the Commonwealth. Police in Windsor, where Prince Harry will marry American actress Meghan Markle next month, said they had begun one of the biggest security operations in their history to ensure the event passes off safely. More than 100,000 visitors are expected to descend to Windsor to celebrate the royal wedding. Fans of the British royal family waiting for the third child of the Duke and Duchess of Cambridge to be born say there have been a lot of activity near St Mary's Hospital in London, where the birth is expected to take place. Kensington Palace has not announced the due date of the baby, but Kate is widely expected to go into labour in the next few days. Chinese President Xi Jinping and British Prime Minister Theresa May agreed to further promote the golden era of bilateral ties between the two sides. The two leaders reached the agreement during a telephone conversation Violent clashes erupted between protesters and police during a Paris demonstration organized by a major trade union to broaden opposition to French President Emmanuel Macron's reforms. Railway workers have been on strike for 8 days this month. German Chancellor Angela Merkel is confident that the European Union will achieve good results on a wide spectrum of reforms, she said before talks with French President Emmanuel Macron, expressing optimism about completing a banking union. European Commissioner for Migration and Home Affairs said that although asylum applications in the European Union dropped significantly in 2017, the security situation remains volatile. The German government last week said it would continue border controls at its border with Austria for 6 more months to ensure Germany's security and deal with ongoing migrant flows. Amid concerns over Syria's breach of millions of Facebook users' personal data, the Indian Parliamentary Committee on Information Technology told the government to get a written commitment from Facebook that it would not be used to manipulate Indian elections. International Monetary Fund Managing Director Christine Lagarde broke from her remarks about the global economy to weigh in on the rising tide of sexual violence in India, including 2 particularly brutal rapes. She said what has happened is just revolting. Cuba's Raul Castro sharply criticized the administration of U.S. President Donald Trump, saying it pursues a repressive, racist and discriminatory policies and it has deliberately rolled back U.S.-Cuba relations in an effort to isolate the island. The State Department said that none of its policy on U.S.-Cuba relations would change after the Cuban National Assembly appointed Miguel Diaz-Canel to be the next president of Cuba. Earlier, Trump had said, "We love Cuba, we are going to take care of Cuba." Paul Manafort, U.S. President Donald Trump's former campaign chairman, will try to convince a judge to throw out charges brought by special counsel Robert Mueller, arguing Mueller has overstepped his authority. Former New York Mayor Rudy Giuliani is joining President Donald Trump's personal legal team a week after federal agents raided the offices and residence of longtime Trump lawyer Michael Cohen. ENCLAVES sought to bolster the force protecting the president from mounting challenges on several sides. The U.S. state narrowly confirmed President Donald Trump's pick to head the space agency NASA. Jim Bridenstine, a congressman from Oklahoma, U.S. Navy veteran and former pilot, will become the 13th administration of the National Aeronautics and Space Administration on 7 months after Trump named him to lead the agency. U.S. President Donald Trump toured a military base in Florida to observe national security resources before departing the Joint Interagency Task Force South. He thanks officials for the work they do combating the drug trade and human trafficking. Newborn babies will now be allowed on the Senate floor after senators voted unanimously to approve the rule change. The measure was initiated by Senator Tammy Duckworth, who became the first senator to give birth while in office when she welcomed her daughter on April 9th. A huge fire was reported at a Valero refinery in Texas City. There have been no reports of injuries and investigators are working to learn more about this incident. The cause of the fire is unknown. European Union states unanimously voted to ban imports of Brazilian meat products, mostly poultry, dealing a blow to the South American country's largest chicken processor. BRFSA, the European Commissioner, said the ban involved 20 Brazilian establishments that have been so far authorized to export into the EU. Philadelphia Police Commissioner Richard Ross apologized to two black men who were arrested in a Starbucks coffee shop last week, which sparked accusations of racial profiling. Protesters marched to the Sacramento District Attorney Office asking for justice in the shooting of Stephon Clark. The protesters delivered a petition with 100,000 signatures to the office of Anne Mary Schubert. A massive student protest against President Sebastian Pinera and privatizing education in Santiago ended in clashes. Student activists only managed to march a few blocks before small groups of protesters clashed with police. Hundreds of protesters demonstrated against a law to change Senegal's electoral code due to be voted in parliament in the capital, Dakar. The new law would require presidential candidates to be endorsed by a minimum 1% of the electorate nationwide to be eligible to stand for elections. A protest over social security changes in Nicaragua has led to clashes between opponents of the measure and government backers. Hundreds of activists, elderly people and others were demonstrating in the capital of Managua when they were set upon by members of pro-government youth group and public workers. The son of a key figure in Paraguay's 1954 to 1989 dictatorship is expected to easily win the presidency in Sunday's election, but his party is projected to lose seats in Congress, complicating his business-friendly legislative agenda. The Philippines' newly installed National Police Chief Oscar Alde has said that he would continue President Rodrigo Duterte's war on drugs as he assumed his post at a ceremony in Manila. After a months-long investigation, Peru has toppled a counterfeiting operation based in a home in Greater Lima that had produced a total of roughly $18.5 million. The bills were mostly fake dollar bills, but were also fake Peruvian soles and Bolivian pesos. The money was destined for Latin American countries as well as the United States and Europe. German foreign minister said that the country's responsibility to protect Jewish lives will never end at a celebration of the 70th anniversary of Israeli Independence Day in Berlin. The event took place on special significance amid concerns that anti-Semitism could be on the rise in Germany. Poland's president paid tribute to those killed in the suppression of the Warsaw Ghetto uprising, which took place 75 years ago during Nazi Germany's occupation of Poland in the Second World War. President Andrzej Duda visited the grave of the uprising's commander in Warsaw's Jewish cemetery and gave an address to a crowd of onlookers holding yellow daffodils, a symbol of the uprising, at a monument in the city center. Lance Armstrong has agreed to pay $5 million in order to settle the looming federal fraud case stemming from his drug-fueled reign as king of the Tour de France. The former cycling superstar was due to face a trial next month over claims he defrauded the U.S. government when he doped while racing for his United States Postal Service sponsored team.